I'm here with Amy Tan, and she has a great idea really for stitching on paper, and not only that, but using the same idea twice, right?
Exactly, because you have a layout that you like the framework of, but you want to use different elements like patterned papers and different stickers, and this is a great way to kind of knock yourself off.
I love that idea. It's like do the work once but get all the benefits. So let's look at the beautiful layout that you brought with you. Super cute. It features 4 photos. I love that little stitched cloud, all the sort of metallic elements, that beautiful frame. It's amazing.
Yeah, so the frame is actually something that I went ahead and painted, and I also copied it on a laser printer.
Something that it's toner based, right?
Yes, because I want to run it through my foil applicator machine and have a gold frame.
Which is a really cool idea, and of course, most heat laminators from an office supply, place will work with heat apply foil, which is a cool idea. You just need to check the temperature gauges.
Great. So I thought that would be fun for you to cut out for me.
Yeah, so I have one here that's obviously ready to go, and I've just put it right into my electronic cutter, and I'm gonna go ahead and cut that. Now, if you didn't have a cutter, a craft knife and a pair of scissors, or, a really aggressive, tearing could get you an interesting look, or you could just leave it as it is, frankly, and put your photos on top of it.
Well, the great thing about waiting for something like that to process is that we're going to be doing hand stitching on paper. And because I sew a lot on paper, the main step is to prepare to do it, and I always poke the holes because they serve as a guide to your hand stitching. I've got a template here, and what I'm going to do is take a paper piercer. I've got it on a foam mat. You can also use a mouse pad, actually.
I was gonna say, that's what I use, a mouse pad. I've heard people using a stack of magazines, and again, if you didn't have a paper piercer, you could use a needle, a push pin, lots of other things. Something pokey, I guess, is what you want to use.
Sharp, right? Yes.
Exactly.
So I think that the easiest way to explain this is that you go through, and because I already have a stencil here, I'm going ahead and poking all the holes. Around the curves, it is important to have the holes about 1/4 inch apart, but around the straighter parts here, I'm actually going to cheat it. So this is a straight line going across here, and I'm going to leave it, instead of poking all those holes for stitching, I'm going to simply stitch one line across. I love saving time.
I am a super lazy crafter.
Nobody's going to notice the difference. What I like to do when I thread my needle is I use crochet thread, and I simply thread it so that there's a long tail and a short tail. And to tie the knot, I wrap it around my finger.
I have a question. Is crochet thread the same thing as embroidery floss, or is it different?
It's slightly different because embroidery floss has, I believe, 6 strands to it. This one only has 2, and it's a little bit thinner. And the reason I like this is because it's not something you have to take apart. You can go ahead and use it as is.
I see, because it's twisted together as opposed to embroidery floss, which is just lined up together.
Right.
Okay, so I see that you've created a knot and you're starting at the back.
Yes, I start at the back. I poke my needle through the first hole, and the main stitch I use is called a back stitch. So I'm going to flip it back to the front and go ahead and go through my second hole. The nice thing about the holes is it serves as a guide so you know exactly where you're going next. Now I'll flip it over again and go to the back, the next hole.
I think this is one of those things that you get better at the more that you practice, and you don't have to think so much, you just kind of go.
It's actually very therapeutic for me because I've done it so much. I like taking this and maybe sitting in front of the TV and watching your favorite show,
yeah,
which is
well,
probably this one.
I liked what you were saying too about while something else is cutting or something else is heating or dinner is boiling on the stove or whatever, that actually you take the time to stitch, which is kind of a nice idea, so that it is something you can pick up and drop and pick up and drop. And the reason I know that is because you actually have one that you've stitched most of the way, but not quite all the way. And we're going to be able to pick that up with absolutely no problem at all.
Right, so this cloud is almost complete. I have one more tiny back stitch to do, and then I'll show you how I can simply go across. Now, you don't want to do this with fabric because, if you're doing something with clothing, you don't want to have a long stitch going across. But with paper, nobody's going to be looking at the back. Nobody's going to be poking their arms through it.
You can even glue it if you have a problem, which you really can't do with
it's not that big of a deal. So here I'm going to go ahead and go through that first hole that I started with and poke it all the way through, pull it, So you have a straight line going across. Now, if I didn't want to knot it in the back, what I could do is simply tear off a piece of washi tape, stick it down, and then cut it.
And that makes sure that you have a really flat surface with no bumps underneath and you don't even have to worry about it, right?
Yeah. So it's really nice because then once you have this piece, you can either leave it as is, or here's a simple way to color it. So I've got this acrylic paint here that I'm just going to shake up. I don't even need anything besides a brush, dipping the brush right in.
I was gonna say, I noticed you didn't pour any of the paint out anywhere, you're not putting anything, you're just dipping your brush straight into your paint. That's a great idea.
Yeah, I love shortcuts like this. Doesn't even make that much of a mess, and I'm going ahead and filling in the cloud.
And you know, if you're not a paint person, I can totally see you could take a white marker, you could take a white gel pen, you could do all sorts of stuff that would really be cool to get that on there. I also love that you're mixing, again, hand stitching, hand painting, like so many different textures and parts of yourself.
Exactly. I just think that if you can make it unique and your own, it's just a really fun little step that you can do. And what I'm going to do here is just take this and I can lay it down roughly over here and mimic what I have already done.
I was going to say, if we look back at your original design and hold it really close here, we can see that where you had 4 photos here, you're using 1 photo there. And then of course you have the cloud and the cloud. And now we're going to go ahead, and if you explain a little bit more about what you're going to pick up here, I think that would be really great.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to grab the frame here,
Here
and then
go.
you can actually just put it down. You can add strips of washi tape. Do you want to show the samples of what you could do with the hand stitching as well?
I think that's so cool.
Yeah, so I'm just going to place
some samples
this
right here that I'm excited to share. So this is an example of, you don't even need a photo. This would be a great piece to put into a frame or do anything like that with. Totally beautiful. You also have another gorgeous sample here where, wow, first of all, your son is adorable. But second, you've stitched right across the photo. And again, one of the design things that I love that you do is you mimic shapes over and over. So we have the circles here, and those little circles there as well, which is great. And it actually kind of mimics his eyes, which are so cute and round. And then here we have, again, stitching combined with painting. So it's your handwriting, but again, twice, because we used a template for that stitching, but instead I see what you're doing here is just poking with your own handwriting. Very, very cool.
The trick there is just to write it in pencil, go ahead and poke your holes, and then erase immediately afterward.
That is such a great tip. And here we go. You can see more stitching details of all kinds. It doesn't actually have to be a shape. And on this final one here, I can see, look at those hearts. So cute. Such a great way to get so much energy into your pages.